Hello and welcome to 802 Garage. My name is Aaron and today I'm going to be unboxing this Eastwood DIY powder coating system for you, as well as showing you how to set it up and giving you an overview of everything you need to successfully powder coat at home or in your garage. Now, I actually worked in a factory on a powder coat paint line for over a year and was the inspector for that line for quite a while, so I had to make sure that everything that came out looked top-notch. Therefore, I know quite a bit about powder coating, and I'm hoping I'll have some useful information and hot tips to share with you in this video and my follow-up on how to apply powder coat paint. Before I go any further, I want to note that I'll be putting links down in the description to all the items I show you in this video, as well as some that I mentioned that I don't have on hand right now. I'll only be linking you to the things that I think are a good value for money and I know should work well for you. If you do check out those links, and especially if you buy anything from them, you'll really be helping out my channel, so I greatly appreciate it. Now, the only two things you're definitely going to need to successfully powder coat at home are a powder coating gun and powder coat paint. This gun itself is about $80 from Eastwood right now, though there are competing products on Amazon and even Harbor Freight, which I will also link you to in the description, but I think this one is a good bet based on reviews. As far as powder coat paint goes, it's usually about $15 to $20 per pound shipped, which is fairly pricey. Sometimes you can get a better deal. I will link you a few different colors on Amazon, and you can also look on eBay and in some other places. There are other items I highly recommend you have to get set up for powder coat painting though, including a digital infrared thermometer with a laser, like this one. This is actually only $8 on Amazon right now, and it should work just fine. There are a multitude of these. I will provide a couple links, but any of them should really work. It's also going to be very handy to have an air pressure regulator that is not the primary one on your air compressor, just so that you can adjust the pressure low enough for the gun. And the ones from Harbor Freight are actually way too high pressure to be very useful for this, so I'll link a different one than this because this has to be basically turned all the way down. It's also a very good idea to have a moisture separator to put in line with your gun because you really don't want any moisture getting into the paint. And along with all that, it's nice to have a little whip hose so that you don't actually have to have this all hooked up right to the base of your gun. This is a really high quality one by Goodyear, but I'll link a couple options down in the description. Now, powder coat paint is exactly what it says. It is a powdered substance which gets applied to the metal part, and then it is melted, and that's how it adheres to the surface. So you are going to need something to heat those metal parts and melt the powder coat paint. A large toaster oven does the job very well, and I will link an option to one of those, but you get the point. You could also use an electric oven or even a propane oven hooked up in your garage, anything that can get up to at least 450 degrees Fahrenheit. And since this does get very hot, there are some special preparation products you may want to have, such as high temperature masking tape and silicone caps and plugs. There's actually a really nifty kit that comes with everything you could need on Amazon that I just found while researching for this video, so I'll link you to that. And I think that that'll get anybody set up for powder coating parts where they need to protect threads or bolts or anything like that. It's also very nifty to have wire hangers, and make sure that you have a way to hang things from the inside of whatever kind of oven you're using, because typically you hang powder coated parts through a hole while they're being cooked. That way you don't disrupt the paint on the part. Now, you're also, of course, going to need an air compressor or at least some source of compressed air. Luckily, you don't need one this big. Even a little pancake compressor will work because we're going to be using very low pressures and a low square cubic feet per minute of air. I also highly recommend having some wire brushing and grinding tools on hand because prepping the parts is absolutely imperative for the powder coat paint process to work properly. And along that same vein of information, I would definitely recommend some rubbing alcohol for final prep on the parts. Now, onward to the unboxing, which should be fairly simple because there aren't that many components in a simple cheap powder coating kit like this. In the factory I worked in, we were using multi-$1,000 guns that had many components, a tank that could hold up to 50 pounds of paint, and many adjustments for painting any type of part. However, in this case, you're basically going to get a simple plastic gun, just like this. It comes with a container to hold the paint, and you can see there's an air hose leading down. You get some instructions, obviously, and then it's going to come with this control box. And so this control box is really what does all the important work. It's going to give you a grounding strap, which is imperative for getting the paint to actually stick to the part. It's how you plug it into power, and it's also how you energize the gun itself. So the way this works is, obviously, once you connect air to the base of the gun and pull the trigger, you're going to be having the air pull paint out of the container and spray it into the air. It basically atomizes it, although it's already a powder before leaving the gun, and that's going to stick to the part. But the way it does that is this box actually imparts a negative charge onto the paint particles, and then when you ground out the part, it actually causes the paint particles to stick to the part through magnetism. So that's why powder coat painting is so clever, because it actually makes the paint particles stick to the part and then bakes them on. So they're in every little crevice and they're firmly adhered to it through the heating and cooling process. And in this case, in order to actually energize the particles, you press this button and then you pull the trigger to let the paint out of the gun. So it's pretty straightforward, a little bit more complicated than just using a rattle can, but you will get a much more durable and often better looking finish. Now, setting up this system is pretty straightforward, but I do just want to give you a few tips based on how I'm going to set mine up to make sure that it's easy to work with. So obviously you would put the paint into this plastic container. It is a powder, so make sure that you pour very slowly and do treat it like a liquid paint. You don't want any contaminants, any moisture whatsoever. So wear gloves, make sure whatever you're using to transfer it is perfectly clean, and make sure you don't spill it, obviously, because it will make a dust cloud. So then you're going to want to screw this back into the gun, and I will say I have seen people say that this is fairly easy to break. So don't over tighten this, just tighten it until it's nicely sealed. Since I did mention dust clouds, I also want to note that you will want to have a breathing mask whenever you're working with powder coat paint. It doesn't have to be a respirator, but at least something to block dust particles from coming directly into your nose and mouth. They can, in fact, damage your lungs or potentially cause cancer, at least according to the state of California, as everything says. You're also going to need to hook up a standard air hose connection to the gun. And then this is where things get a little bit trickier, because this needs a very light air supply. I believe it's something like 5 to 10 psi. The exact number's in the description, and you may want to vary it a little bit based on how your experience goes. That's where I would recommend having a whip hose that connects to this, separate from the rest of your air system. And to the other end of that whip is where you could install your pressure regulator so that you don't always have to mess with your air compressor. And this is also where you would want to put an inline moisture and oil filter, that way you are not contaminating the paint. So you want to set this as low as possible, below 10 psi, or you could damage the gun. After all that hookup is done, obviously you would just want to plug this into any grounded outlet. You do want to make sure it's grounded, because that's essential for this process to work. And then you would simply hook the grounding clip to whatever metal part you are working with, or the hooks that are attached to, as long as there is metal-to-metal contact. And then you would pretty much be ready to paint. So you would push the button and then pull the trigger with the PSI set properly, and paint would disperse onto the part. For a full demo of me using this powder coating system and my tips in that video on how to make sure you get a great finish at the end, please watch the next video in this series. Thank you very much for watching this overview on how to get set up for powder coat painting at home. I sincerely hope this video from someone who has worked in an industrial powder coat painting setting will be helpful to you. I also hope my next video on prepping, painting, and baking will be helpful to you as well. I'll put a link up to that in the corner, and it'll be on the end screen as well. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask in the comments down below. I will definitely get back to you soon, and I do know quite a bit about the powder coating process. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, and if you like my channel, my advice, or project cars, please subscribe to 802 Garage. The button's right down there as always. Thank you so much, and I will see you all soon.